Of approval of the minutes as a block, respond with the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And we have our, moving on to our monthly financial reports. Questions, discussion regarding those reports? Approve those as a block.
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All those in favor, respond with the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Mr. Harvey, we'll turn it over to you for introduction.
Okay, if Patty Avert and Crystal Woolridge come up, I'd like to, Crystal, our new environmental specialist, is out the office. She's taken, Kenny Lou Allen had been coming in and putting in a lot of extra effort. And Crystal has given him a break so he can go supposed to do, but we're awfully glad to have Crystal. She lives in Amelia over on Buckskin Creek Road. Local deputy and keeper. We're glad.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Good to have you. All right, and that brings us to the public comment portion of the agenda. As a reminder, we did the public hearing for zoning last month, so there won't be a comment period when we get to that topic again. So if you have any comments regarding the apartment complex or anything else, this is your time to do so. We do have updated proffers, which we'll discuss for that rezoning later, and the developer will have an opportunity to speak at that point. So anyone who wants to speak can come on up to the podium and just state and get in line on the aisle to go next. Just state your name, address, and district. Mic is yours. 3 minutes each.
Chase Swan, 14621 Ash Lake Manor Drive, Chesterfield, Virginia, 23832. I'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and I will not be able to read my letter within the 3 minutes, so bear with me, please. A special thanks to you, Mr. Frank Harris, for 23 years of dignified and engaged service to the Amelia Board of Supervisors. Mr. Scott, you recall Attorney Gore on December 2019 about your upcoming residency issues and advised him that you didn't want to get tongues a wagging? Do you recall where Attorney Gore told you to establish domicile, a person must live in a particular locality with intention to remain? Mr. Scott, do you recall asking Holly Steele in February 2021 about your upcoming residency issues? Ms. Steele responded from her official county email and advised you this is not permitted in RP-5. In B1 and B2, which is what the Amelia bottom is zoned, there's a specific permit use for residency within or above a business. That is not listed as a permitted use or special exemption use in RP-5 where your business is located. You. Mr. Scott, do you recall saying it's not that complicated really? She, referring to Ms. Steele, told me it's not allowed. Months later, I did it anyway. Also at the same time saying, I have not been officially notified of any wrongdoing of any kind by anybody from the county, just some Facebook hacks. And I don't want to repeat this question since you've already said you forgot when you called me a racist, or put it as cited me as a racist for looking into how much tax revenue the proposed apartments would generate. I would have been pleased with a simple sorry for everyone.
Comment you made.
That has to do with tax revenue?
I didn't call you out by name. I listed some comments that were made and said they were racist, and they were racist.
You. Right now, today, at this very second, are you qualified to vote?
Yep, District 2.
Why has your voter's registration card read 13002 Chula Road for the entirety of your stay in Amelia, but you've been paying residential personal property tax on 1300 Chula Road, tax map ID 23-9D?
That's actually wrong. Voter registration card says 13302. Taxes on both 13302 and 13 since I've lived in.
Correct, but which one is the residential address?
Doesn't matter.
Okay. Thank you for your answer.
It's got nothing to do with anything.
Before we start an argument over where you lived on your property right now, your voter's registration card, as you said, states 1300 Chula Road.
No.
But in fact,
No, 13302.
sorry, thank you for correcting me, 13302. But in fact, as of November 6, 2021, you now live at 13100 Chula Road with Ruth and Tom Ashton.
That's
How
right.
can you vote at 13302 when you live at 13100 Chula Road?
I voted, when I voted in the November election, I was living at 13302. As you said, I moved on the.
Correct. Tonight, could you vote?
Excuse me?
Could you vote?
Tonight's vote has nothing to do with where you're registered.
If there was an election, could you vote in it tonight?
No, I'd have to get my voter registration card changed.
So you cannot vote in right now, correct?
I cannot vote in a public election. I
Okay.
can vote as a member of the Board of Supervisors.
For you to maintain your seat, you have to be able to do that.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do. Are you not familiar with the County Board of Supervisors
No, I
book?
don't.
But we'll continue.
I moved. I have time to change my address. I haven't done that yet. Do you do it the day after you move?
Yes.
I don't think so. I don't think most people do. I'll get it changed before the next November election. That's all.
It is crucial that all the Amelia Board of Supervisors have the intent to stay indefinitely in the county to be able to view for the future of the county. The honorable thing to do would be resign. With the controversy of Roger Scott's ability to be a member of the Board of Supervisors and 2 new members about to join the Board of Supervisors, I request that you show the citizens of Amelia true grit and true leadership to defer any non-essential votes until the new board is in place. Let the future of Amelia vote on the future of Amelia.
Question. I thought you lived in Amelia. You said you're
He's
a
playing games.
Chesterfield resident?
That's my home.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of addresses in my head. I must have mistyped that.
That's my address in
You didn't
Chesterfield.
say it, just type it. You actually spoke it at your address earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. My address is 12060 Morgan Lane, Amelia Courthouse, Virginia, District 4. Thank you, Mr. Easter.
Comments?
Two things. I did want to comment on the apartments
Name
and
and address.
I'm sorry, Martin Conkle, 16211 Church Street here in Amelia. So first thing real quick, I'm not going to bother addressing Mr. Scott. I think we've done that enough. Just realize as citizens, when we look at the board, you are 5 individuals up there, but we see a board. We see a team of people that are supposed to be leading our county. You're the leaders of that. You're supposed to be deciding things for us. And I think a lot of citizens are upset because of the issue of Mr. Scott. Nobody else has really stood up and taken that leadership role and denounced what is very deceitful and is very unethical of what you did. And you got caught. We caught you. If you think otherwise, that's fine. But a lot of the other citizens here are worried about that. And we really just are kind of crying out for somebody else on this board to say, look, we are a team. We're sorry one of our members maybe failed this community. Just somebody step up and be that leader. Like, we really want that. That's why I threw the suggestion, we can't remove Mr. Scott. What he did was wrong, and you can't remove him, and there's certain limitations that you can do, and we understand that. But I think, like he said, in solidarity with the county and what is right, I think deferring some major issues until the new board comes in. You say you're representing District 2 still.
Yes.
But District 2 just voted for the polar opposite of you politically.
That's right.
You're not what District 2 wants anymore. You can still sit there and do your thing. I get that. That's cool. But I think the other board members should note that. And we just really want some leadership. Now, to the apartments. I'm trying to fit this in 3 minutes real quick. There's something said last time I like to address because the developer, Rick Lemire, is he here? Cool. Thank you. We as citizens are concerned about the subsidies and federal subsidies people are going to be receiving these apartments. The developer here said, that's not a conversation we should really be having. I am sorry, I fully disagree. That is absolutely a conversation we should be having. I come from Newport News. I had apartments like that around the corner from my house. I watched the drug dealers sell their drugs on the corner of my street. We had to chase them away. I've had my cars broken into. I watched my neighbors' homes being broken into. We know where the people were coming from. It matters. I'm sorry. Take it as you will. Mr. Scott, you can call me whatever you want. I really don't care. That is the truth. And I don't want this in my new neighborhood, in my new home of Amelia. I'm sorry. And a lot of other people have spoken about that just because they might not have been able to make this meeting. The citizens in this county have been very clear what we want. And just please, just as leaders of this community, just listen to us. Just please. We've made our voice heard. This is a big issue. And if we're going to vote on it tonight, just please do the right thing, guys. Thank you.
Ms. Southall comes up, I'll just respond to the first part of that. As he said, there is no authority one board member has over another board member. We cannot police, et cetera, anyone. And we've been, information that's been provided plus on our own. A zoning violation does not disqualify someone from like that. Nothing to do with not provide us any authority over.
And I have been to several of your meetings and the Planning Commission meetings since you all started getting presentations about this proposed apartment complex. And I've listened to the developer change little things to find ways to please us, changing things like washing machines and dryers and community centers and playgrounds and things like that. But no matter what he does and now I think he's talking about to the county, even with all these nice little additions, three things seem to stand out in my mind every time we talk about this specific apartment complex. And the problem is not apartments. It is the location of these apartments. And I feel that this 84 unit condensed location on the edge of the village is the wrong location for these apartment complex. And for the obvious reasons is the traffic problems that it's going to produce coming out of Amelia Avenue onto 360. The second is the very dangerous problem with school buses because they will have to stop on Amelia Avenue. And just the fact that we are creating at that already very kind of iffy intersection, the flashing lights, we are creating another problem that doesn't need to be there. And so I understand you all are going to vote on it tonight. And I'm hoping that when you're thinking about it and voting about it, you think about, yes, maybe we do need apartment complex for a certain income of people that can't afford to buy a lovely home yet. But maybe this congested, unattractive, lopsided pumping of people is not the right place to put the apartment complex. Thank you.
Troy Carter, Jetersville, 22930 Johnson Road. Well, here we are. What a great night it is. So we'll have a little closure, maybe a beginning, I don't know. But one word, Carol. You remember a guy named Carol? Do you remember Carol? You don't? Well, I mean, everybody knows who he is. And you torched him. You torched him hard. And you ran on transparency. Everything you said was transparency, transparency, transparency. So anyway, the deal is, what ordinance matters after this? Whatever ordinance you make, what does it matter? He destroyed that for y'all. He destroyed it for the whole county. Because if he's allowed to do what he did, then where do we go from here? How do we make up for it? So, that's that. We asked for leadership. We asked for you guys. You guys were put up there to show leadership for your constituents. The thing is, we keep crying out for someone to stand up for your constituents, to have a voice against him, to say what's on your mind. He has tarnished every single one of your images because you've allowed this to happen. If you knew it, if you didn't, it came out. It is what it is. Why not stand up and take your position on this? You can't just look at us and not say anything, or you did say something, Joseph, which I appreciate your little bit, okay? But the thing is, we need that leadership. We need your voice. And when someone comes in our community, like this man has, and tortures members of our community, and that old white-headed bunch that was up here before, everybody was like mad at. You talked rather frequently about it in the paper. Of what you seen was non-transparent, all these backroom stuff going on. Where are we at now? Where are we at today? In the beginning, you were the only one that ran, so you took the position. And then you torched the whole board that was already here. Now, look at where you're at now. You're sitting in the catbird seat. Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's seeing who you really are on Facebook. Oh my gosh, on Facebook. You have torched this whole community. You have put people against each other, playing your progressive liberal games. It's the truth. And believe me, on Veterans Day, laugh if you want, giggle if you want. There was a great man on this board who was a veteran that did more for this community than you ever could imagine. And you know who Carol is.
That's
Yeah,
3
you do.
that's-
He is a
that's
good
3
man that you
that's
try to
3 minutes.
destroy.
That's 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Stand up for your constituents.
Pipes, 1600 Richmond Road, District 5. Go a little different route. Sick of this. Change it a little bit. Just thank Mr. Harris. I haven't always agreed on everything. Fireman, people, I've never seen him put himself first. Always put the community first. He stepped out for that, even when it was times it was hard. Personal opinion is, all of you talk to him, learn from him, experiences he's gotten. I just want to thank Mr. Harris for his service. I probably won't get to be here next month at the last one or whatever. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your service.
Good evening. Mickey Hodges, District 4, 18011 Butler's Road. Don't speak much, but when I do, community. There's been a lot of topics to talk about. I'm not going to dwell on those. First, I want to thank Harris. I've been coming to the board meetings for quite some time, and he has service, good man. It's been said. What I come to the board for is a different topic. I don't think it's on anybody else's tongue at the moment. Is the webpage that was approved December of last year. Looks like some money set aside, RFP done, whole process, everything selected, probably the more expensive one, but beside the point if it meets the RFP, which it looked like it did. Question is really around, looks like it was paid for, developed, deployed. A year later, we still haven't seen it. So we're just wondering, it's going to come out, assuming that definitely want to be upgraded, right? Because they modernized and all that. It's like a good selection from a modular architecture. It looks like you bought 3 modules. Some of them to benefit. And so just wondering when is that money going to come to fruition for community, be able to utilize? Really my question.
Way under 3 minutes. I'll take a moment to respond then. You've heard our frustration as a board on this topic several times. It was close to rolling out. We did get several requests to delay because it would have rolled out right during the election and could have messed up information accessible for that. Mr. Harvey, do you remember there's a new date?
We're supposed to have a meeting right before Thanksgiving, which I guess will be next week, with the provider.
So is that,
Very close.
you have an ETA on when that would be resolved?
Before the end of November, I think was the date. I can't
The
remember the date.
prior ETA before there was a concern about the election was November, which was going to be switched. Put it off, and it required a prior meeting before the switch would be throughout. Lady at Civic Plus said we Thanksgiving, put the switch when lesser activity going on, typically during the normal part of it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Jeff Squires, 18650 Patrick Road, Amelia, Virginia. Mr. Harris for his service to the county. Seeing you around, mutual people that knew you that spoke highly. I'm against the apartment, just where it's located. Any type of talk to other people, other counties, Goochland. Especially Goochland, but working Ottaway right now. I see that the type of people that aren't stakeholders, county as in the rent instead of home, people that own, that don't pay taxes, that don't tax base that way, seem to detriment to all. Farmers won't have a voice like they used to because people that don't have the same stakeholder. So it's one of the main reasons why I'm against it. Where people just don't, owners, and just end up causing change to the area that just is. So feel like developer also offering, said this last meeting, money based on whether they get the approval or not. Definitely seeming to the board control of that how that would just look bad for county. So that's why I asked.
clarify, though, that cash proffers are a standard item in development and are approved and regulated or approved within state law. They're clarify that standard and not specific to. Anyone else? Did we, I'm sorry, I should have asked. No one on video, any email comments?
Sir.
That will close the public comment portion of the meeting. Thank you all. And we'll move into the staff committee and organization reports. And as first up is VDOT. Hello, Ms. Worley.
Evening. A few items from our monthly report to highlight are our maintenance area headquarters have replaced several pipes over the last 3 weeks since the last meeting. One on Bridgeforth Mill Drive that was completed last week with asphalt scheduled to be placed next week. One on Ponton Circle Road, which was completed, I believe, yesterday. And 2 pipe replacements on Namazine. One was completed last week and the other is scheduled to take place next week. And they've also been doing some shoulder work on 360, addressing some rutting on the shoulders. Updates on traffic studies. Grub Hill Church Road was one that Mr. Easter requested, and that is still currently under review by traffic engineering for a safety study due to some requests due to crash history there.
Thank you.
And Butler's Road through truck restriction, they did complete a cursory review for that through truck restriction and found that there are 4 criteria that the CTB uses to determine if a route is eligible for a through truck restriction. And traffic engineering's opinion was that one of the 4 criteria was not met. And that is that truck traffic, the amount of truck traffic and the frequency of it is not incompatible with the geometry of the roadway. And I can certainly provide their cursory review.
Yeah, if you wouldn't
Yeah.
mind, so that I can provide it back to the citizens. But does that mean normally all 4 criteria have to be met?
So
Or is it a
the first 2 are required.
Okay.
The first one is that there's a reasonable alternate route, which in this case there is, 153 to 360. The second is that, like I said, the frequency and nature of truck traffic has to be incompatible with the route that you're requesting the restriction for. So those 2 have to be met. And then the other 2, one is the density of driveways along the route, and the other is the classification of the roadway has to be local or collector. And it has to meet one of those 2, and it at least meets one. I can't remember if it
Thank
meets
you.
both.
Yeah, if you just email it to me
Yep.
offline, that's helpful. And I'll take a look then.
Sure. Yeah,
Thank you.
so I'll provide that. And then unfortunately, I don't have any updates since last month on the 360 median crossovers at this point, or at Goldstetten, we have done the signage, but are waiting for the pavement markings. And at this point, it might not be until the spring with temperatures dropping, but they do have that on their schedule. And those are the main items I have for this month, unless anyone has questions.
Still doing the study for the 360 area, reducing the speed further? Wasn't that something you were following up with the other counties down 360 to see how they
Yeah.
met the criteria when they have less traffic?
Yes, so we did get one study back from Lynchburg. A couple of the locations that I think that you had mentioned in Lynchburg, they didn't have studies on. So I think the speed limits kind of predated a time frame that they would have had a study. And the only one that they did have was basically 2 45-mile-per-hour zones, and there was a 50 or 55-mile-per-hour zone in the middle. And so it was to make a consistent 45-mile-per-hour zone. So it was a little bit different circumstance than what we have in Amelia County. And we did, with construction going on right now, it's not really a good time to collect speed data. And so we had committed to, once the bridges are completed next summer, we can perform another study.
Thanks.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
There's a construction activity going on just below the green box section there on, I don't know, 708 coming out of Manboro, heading east.
Uh-huh.
I just wondering when that was going to be. It's like I think it looks like they're repairing a pipe or
Pipe replacement.
something.
Yeah. So they completed one of them last week and the other one is scheduled to take place next.
This one is, okay. Been getting some calls on that. I thought that's what was happening.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
hadn't had an opportunity to get to it.
Yes, 2 pipe replacements. And yeah, one last week and one next week, and they'll place asphalt on those once the pipes are replaced.
What's going on under the bridge on 360 over the Appomattox?
They're scour repairs.
What?
Scour repairs. It was a contract for several bridges within the Richmond district for scour kind of undermining of the abutments and the piers. So some preventative maintenance on those bridges.
Has Folks Bridge been closed yet for replacement?
I don't believe so. That bridge is actually maintained by our Lynchburg district, so I apologize. I'll have to follow up with them on the schedule for that closure and detour.
I've got one more thing. Back in the spring, we talked about, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but just come to me. We talked about some turn lanes that might be added on 360. It was part of a grant matching thing with some leftover funds. Is that still in the works, or have you heard anything about that? Or
So we had provided estimates to Todd Fortune because I think they were seeking funding as part of the infrastructure bill.
Yeah, it's through Span.
Yes.
For a couple
It was
turn
denied.
lanes.
It was
Okay.
denied.
it was? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, we have those cost estimates if there are smart scale applications or secondary 6-year plan funding that the county wanted to pursue those projects. We could certainly talk about other funding sources for those.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Worley.
Thank you.
Harper? Day schools?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Harvey. The October K-12 enrollment for Amelia County Public Schools was 1569, an ADM of 1560. During our November school board meeting, draft course catalogs for the FY23 school year were presented. We also proposed and the school board approved a change to the COVID quarantine process that will permit an earlier return of students and staff who are quarantined due to a potential exposure. Also at Monday's meeting, our Director of Human Resources presented a salary study comparing Amelia County Public Schools salaries to the 6 counties that border Amelia. These are the counties to whom we most often lose employees. For the past 2.5 years, it has been our goal to get ACPS salaries equal to the average of surrounding counties. The average would place us 4th of the 7 counties. We understand that it would be reasonable for the 3 counties to our north and east to have higher salaries based on their proximity to Richmond, and believe that Emilia should be competitive with the 3 counties to our south and west. Again, our goal is to rank at least 4th out of 7, placing us around the average. To achieve this, we will need to adjust some of our salary scales, primarily at the beginning of the scale where we are the lowest. Once this adjustment is made, We hope to keep pace with annual percent increases comparable to other school divisions. In other information, yesterday, Brenda sent you the October FY22 financials approved by the school board on Monday. We are below budget as revenues and expenditures are about 24% of budget, where we would anticipate them to be at 33%. We have approximately $250,000 of scheduled federal grant reimbursements for the month of November so far. In addition to the financials, we're excited to be able to provide a Thanksgiving-type meal to families again this year, and are thankful to be able to work with our local Food Lion to be able to do this. Meals will be handed out on a first-come, first-served basis on Tuesday, November 23rd, from noon to 2 in the elementary school bus loop.
Do you have any comments or questions for Dr. Harper?
Do you have any idea what the amount would be to get to the average?
We are in the process of calculating that at the present time. We have worked on our teacher scale, our paraprofessional scale, and our administrator scales, as those are the scales with the largest, and our bus driver scales, the largest amount of our employees. We have not completed the work. We are still in the process of doing that. We have had quite a savings this year because we have not been able to fill all of our positions. That's been a real challenge for us, as it has been across the state and nation, as I understand it. Both a shortage of staff as well as substitutes. So we're looking at some of those savings to help get us there. Amelia County has been very far behind when it comes to school division salaries. And we have worked very hard over the last couple of years to try to get closer to this average mark. I think we are within a reasonable amount of being able to do that. We've done a salary study each at 2019 as well as this year. So our plan is every 2 years. In the past, we've compared ourselves with Region 8. As most of you know, Region 8 are school divisions south of us, although go all the way to the North Carolina border. That's not really reasonable because those are not the counties with whom we compete for employees. We compete mostly with those who actually border on Amelia. So this year's salary study is perhaps a little more appropriate than the one done in 2019 because it actually compares us with those with whom we need to be compared.
Thank you, Dr. Harper. All right, we've got the Board of Supervisors activity and committee reports. District 1.
So it's been a pretty slow couple of weeks, meaning this meeting was moved up. Just fielded a few phone calls.
District 2.
Okay, on September 23rd, I participated in a charity golf tournament for STEPS, one of the organizations I serve on the board of, help raise money for their homelessness program, which is grossly underfunded. The event raised more money than any other event in recent history, and it will help house homeless people during the winter when it's needed most. Our region has no homeless shelter, so this money goes to put them in hotels temporarily until some more permanent housing solutions are found. On the 28th, I participated in my final STEPS Finance Committee meeting, followed by my final STEPS General Board meeting. STEPS is in great condition, and we're kicking off the annual financial audit this month. I will continue to chair the audit committee until December 31st. We'll have more meetings with the auditing firm before then, and the audit report will be delivered in January to the STEPS board, and they're looking for finding a replacement for me to chair that committee during that critical time. On November 1st, I attended another special meeting of the Commonwealth Regional Council to listen to a roundtable discussion on some successful economic development regional alliance leaders. Taylor was in that meeting, and I think Paul too, on Zoom. And there's lots of good things happening elsewhere in the state. On November 9th, I attended the EDA meeting where they're reevaluating their strategic plan over the next few months, which is a good thing. They probably should update it to be more in line with what the community actually wants to do or not to do. Today, I attended a Piedmont Senior Resources Finance Committee meeting where we reviewed and prepared the presentation for the Piedmont Senior Resources Finances ahead of the PSR board meeting next Tuesday. And that will likely be my final PSR meeting, as they usually cancel the December meeting. Thanks.
District 3?
I've just had a few, kind of same place David is, the Heartland Regional Authority meeting. I did the FOIA training, and I've had a few smaller subcommittee meetings over the past month. Since we're on the Board of Supervisors, I would like to bring up another subject about supervisors. First, I'd like to thank and congratulate the new members that were elected. And what I would love to see or request is that the new supervisors go ahead, if they haven't already, get their emails assigned, and starting this week, go ahead and put them on to officially invite them and notify them of all of our meetings for November and December. I felt like when I come in blind. Kind of hit me in January pretty hard and had no idea what was going on. And I would love for them to go ahead and be informed and kind of be used to everything. Or if they have any questions, they can be filled in the next 2 months as we go along.
Nope.
You want to go ahead?
Yeah, comprehensive policy management team, I had last month, right after our board meeting, October. Another meeting coming up on the 24th, I believe, my last meeting. PSR meeting is next week also. I believe it's. Anyway, that'll be my last meeting with PSR also. It's been a pleasure working with the board. Feel that really want to get something done. You guys ought to run for this board. I appreciate the that were made to continue on the board. It wasn't because I didn't have any opposition, by the way. I have opposition 5 times, 6 times in each term. But it's been a good experience for me. I continue to remain engaged and involved in the activities of
Right. I'll echo Sean's point. I know when the two of us joined 2 years ago, it was rather challenging not to get any welcome from the board members or the staff, and then kind of find out about so much stuff last minute. So I think it's a great idea to get the 2 board members up to speed. Since the last meeting, I also finished my VACO classes to be a certified board member. I would encourage not just the other board members now, but the 2 new board members especially to do those. Those classes are extremely helpful. Teach you about zoning and revenue and expense. I mean, it's very thorough, so I'd recommend those, and they're a pretty low cost to the county. I also completed the FOIA training as required. I want to update on a couple things that I've seen going around the county in the last few days. So we haven't talked about this in a little while, but as most people remember, we finished the salary study, very similar to what Dr. Harper talked about for the schools. We did one for all of the non-school employees of the county using similar criteria and process that schools did of who we're competing with. The results, as we presented earlier and have been posted on the website for months, were that the county employees, excluding schools, which again, were not part of ours, were pretty fairly paid, but there were some adjustments needed. We made some of the minor adjustments to move people up to minimum during the summer. And we are scheduled for another round of increases in January, which was part of our budget approval for this year. for any employees that are on the county personnel policy. Which brings me to the next point, that the personnel policy work is going well. I'm happy that we hired Mary Beth Smith to be able to lead our human resources department. The first time Amelia's had a full-time resources associate. Mary Beth's been working with Baker Tilly as well as the department heads and constitutional officers to go through that. So I think we're on track to get our personnel policy updated and make it what we need as a county. And then finally, while the constitutional officers were not a specific part of the Baker Tilly study, Baker Tilly did provide some information. The board has also gathered other information on that, and we did complete a study of the constitutional officers' pay as well, which they don't fall under the personnel policy because they are separately elected, of course, and we have found those to be generally adequate as well. That's all my updates. All right, we'll move into the topic that many of you are here for tonight. Steve, do you have anything you want to start with? And then I know we will turn it over to the developers to discuss the updated proffers that they submitted and which, for all of you, are in the board materials, which were posted on the website prior to the meeting. You want to start with them?
So I was, that's really loud. So I was going to discuss the updated proffers, but if you would rather them discuss it, that's fine too. I was just going to touch on the changes, but that's up to you all if you'd rather let them talk about it.
You can hit on them and they can add additional.
Okay. So November 4th, we did receive some changes to the proffers that were presented last month. Okay. Those changes are that the plans now show phasing. The traffic study will include an evaluation of Route 360 and the Amelia Avenue intersection. There will be a traffic signal study for that intersection. There will be an evaluation of the Amelia Avenue entrance intersection. All traffic counts will occur during a time when schools are in session. In addition to the 25-foot buffer, screening will be provided within the buffer where parking lots and buildings are constructed. The method and location of the screening will be determined at the time of site plan approval and will consist of a 6-foot solid board fence, a 6-foot evergreen hedge, or a combination of the two. Except for porch lighting on the units, all parking lot and exterior parking lights will be shielded and dark sky compliant. The applicant will comply with the Emilia County noise ordinance during construction and after the property is occupied. At the time of issuance of a certificate of occupancy for each residential building, either 12-unit or 8-unit, the applicant will pay a cash proffer of $2,500 for each unit. And this money can be used for schools, parks and rec, fire and rescue, and library services. And last, the phasing of units. The units will be phased as follows. No more than 28 units will be constructed before April 2023. No more than a total of 52 units, which is an additional 24 units from phase 1, will be constructed before April 2024. Then no more than a total of 84 units, which is the remaining 32 additional units, will be constructed before April 2025. The clubhouse and playground will be completed no later than December 2023. So those are the changes that were submitted, and they also updated their site plan to reflect that. And like Mr. Easter said, that's all in the board book on the website.
Anyone from the developers team have anything to add or general comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, my name is Ann Neal Cosby. I'm an attorney at McGuire Woods, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I was here, of course, during the last meeting where there were many residents who spoke with concerns about this application, and we listened very carefully. And I addressed the board at the end and promised you that we would go and we would do what we could to modify the proffers in order to address as best as we could their concerns. And so Ms. Steele has read the result of those proffers, so I won't go through them specifically, but again, we did hear about the phasing. So we did put in the phasing plan that she just mentioned, and that was just in response to the concern that 84 units at one time was too much, and could we phase those units so that, there would be a transition for the additional density. So we heard that, we've added that, we hope that's sufficient. If that needs tweaking, we can certainly, we're open to that, but we thought that that was a good proposal and to show that we were listening and made sense to do that. With regard to the traffic impact analysis, again, we tried to identify those areas within a scope of work for a traffic impact analysis that would be conducted at the time of site plan. So not right now, but if we get zoning approval at the time of site plan, we will, as part of that, provide this very fulsome traffic impact analysis that will include studies of the intersections that people are concerned about the traffic light at 360, about that intersection, whether or not there would need to be any improvements into this project. And the proffers already stated and still state that whatever the result of that traffic impact analysis, if it shows that this project will require a light or will require additional turning lanes, whatever those, it says if any transportation improvements are required by the traffic study, such improvements shall be constructed as part of the property development. So if that's what it shows, that we're going to cause a signal to be required, we would have to do that. And so hopefully, again, we've listened and we won't let traffic become an issue. We can't under these proffers. The buffering and landscaping again, and that was really specifically related to I believe his name was Mr. Culver, rather, the next door neighbor. And we listened and we were concerned that we would need to provide additional screening for him. So there's a 25-foot buffer already. And so we're promising to put in, a screen or landscaping again to make sure that he's protected. And likewise, he had concerns about lighting. So we've included all parking lot and exterior building lights shall be shielded and dark sky compliant because we understand that that was a concern. So again, just really trying to address what the citizens were concerned about to the best that we could do that. And hopefully we've made some progress. With regard to the proffer, the $2,500 per unit is really intended to make sure that there are funds available for fiscal impacts to the schools. And so we looked at the percentage of households in the county now that generate schools, applied that number to our 84 units and came up with 21 students. And so the cost per student for those 21 students is spread out over the 84 units. So the idea there was, we would pay our fair share for those students. And so that's a portion of that 2,500. And then there's still surplus on top of that to pay for fire and rescue. And again, we heard that that was an issue. And so we wanted to make sure, again, we were paying our fair share and were, not drawing on county resources. So we tried to do that with the proffer. Again, the phasing, Ms. Steele had discussed, and I won't touch on that again. The other concern, obviously, that people spoke to tonight is just the concern that, Amelia is rural and folks want to keep Amelia County rural, and that is completely understandable. And, without, reiterating everything from our presentation at the last meeting, I would just again end on the comprehensive plan. And in your own plan, that the goals of that plan recognize that the way to keep Amelia rural is to direct higher density, which the county, acknowledges in the plan is necessary. High density units and smaller units are necessary in every locality. You know, people, we have to have equitable housing. That's just a fact of life. And we're trying to do a quality product, a quality community in a transitional area in the area that's designated in the comprehensive plan as being appropriate for the higher density. So we are trying to be guided by your comprehensive plan, which is the guide. So, we think we've brought you what the comprehensive plan calls for this property and for this area. We've tried to mitigate fiscal impacts, traffic, aesthetics, buffers, impacts on neighbors. So I thank you for your time. I know this is a hard project. I appreciate the comments of all the residents. Again, we've tried very hard to listen. And we know this is not easy on you and hope that you will, vote in our favor, but truly appreciate your time in our office.
Any questions for Ms. Cosby or members of the development team?
I have a couple questions for Mr. Lemaire. You don't have to come up. You can just answer from there. You come up, okay. Due to my support of this project, there's been some accusations made against me, and I just wanted to, for the record, clarify something with you, if you don't mind. Do we have any kind of relationship outside of working with you outside of my working with you to navigate the process of going through our planning department and showing you a few sites where you might possibly build this project? Do we have any kind of relationship other than that?
Other than that, no.
And do I, in any way, personally, financially, commercially, or otherwise benefit if this apartment complex goes through?
No.
And Mr. Pemberton, can you say this, Hamilton say the same thing as the landowner? Thank you.
Other comments or questions? All right, I'd entertain a motion to vote on the approval of this request.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Lemaire has successfully demonstrated his willingness to work with the county and mitigate most of its concerns, and especially around the traffic. He's willing to get VDOT involved and say whatever it takes to get it done. He's agreed to phase in the project. He's agreed to have most of what the concerns were covered. And if there's no more discussion, I move that we accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and approve this project.
Any comments or questions on the motion?
I plan to vote against it, Mr. Chairman. I have a problem, I still have a problem with the traffic issue. I have a problem with the effect that it'll have some of the entities and school system services here. And then for this issue that's there relative to cloudy relationship, so to speak, that there exists between. So for those reasons,
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, Mr. Harris said, schools has already said that planning for Poppies for a new school. This is just school. Kind of move that up. So, piggyback off what Mr. Harris.
I want to thank the developer and their team for the 2 sets of proffer updates that have been done over the last 6 weeks, I guess it is. I do think you all made a significant effort to address the concerns that were brought forward. I do wish that perhaps those had been done much earlier in the process and could have been some working with the citizens and some presentations prior to the Planning Commission, so we didn't get into such a heated situation within the county. But I do appreciate your updates and hard work on this. Any other comments before vote? Okay, to be clear, the motion is for approval of the rezoning. So all those in favor of approval of the rezoning, respond with the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right, thank you. The rezoning passed. Yes, we'll do a roll call for you. Yes, District 1. District 2.
Aye.
District 3.
No.
District 4, vote no. District 5.
No.
Go, what you need. All right, we'll move to the other community development item, which is special event ordinance discussion. And we've been discussing this for a couple of meetings. So thank you, Ms. Steele, for bringing this back to us. Kind of do an overview maybe of that and questions and comments, if that works for you.
Yes, so this was just an initial draft. I took the existing ordinance and went through and made some changes based on some issues that had been coming up over the past few months. So one small change I made was just changing county manager to county administrator because we don't have a county manager. As far as permit requirements, it currently just states that the conditions may include but are not limited to the provision of adequate crowd and traffic control, security, fire protection, food handling, waste and refuse disposal, and noise restrictions. I added in that this may require written approval from the Sheriff's Office, Public Works, Health Department, Emergency Management, Parks and Recreation, Community Development, Rescue Squad, and/or the Fire Department prior to permit approval. The permittee shall be responsible for any cost associated with complying with this section. And then towards the end, I changed in the section for permits requiring governing body approval. Upon receipt of an application for those type of permits, the county administrator or his designee will transmit the application to county department heads and the Board of Supervisors for its consideration. County department heads shall review and provide approval or denial with comments prior to the Board of Supervisors consideration. I think that was an important component because issues were coming up the night it was being voted on and there wasn't really time to troubleshoot them before you all had to vote. So with this, it would go to department heads first to comment on and approve, deny, give their feedback before it gets to you all. So you'll have that when you make a decision. And that's just for ones that actually come to you all, which is events that are 500 or more people. Let's see. Okay, and then the actual fees, I did add in a sentence saying that permit fees are waived only for agencies and departments funded primarily by the County of Amelia, because there was also some confusion with that. I completely scratched out all of the 15 different fees that we had, and we changed it. We had to discuss this a few months ago of just taking it to flat rates of single day event, $25, 2-day event, $50, and then 3+ day event / season permits, $100. There is a new section that we added, and this is for additional fees. And this states that the County of Amelia requires law enforcement presence at special events in accordance with the following guidelines. Applicants are required to schedule law enforcement directly with the Amelia County Sheriff's Office or with a private security company. And then with that, we took directly from other ordinances the scale of how many officers they would need. And as I said earlier, they would be in charge of paying that fee directly to the proper department. So, and there's different officers, number of officers required depending if there's alcohol or not. So those were the main changes. I think that was some of the biggest issues that came up. I haven't changed the actual application itself yet because a lot of the language in the application comes straight from the ordinance. I think it makes sense to get this squared away first and then update the application to reflect that. But if you all have questions or if there are any issues that weren't addressed in these changes, let me know and we can go back to the drawing board.
My review on it generally simplifies things and becomes more clear both, and for any citizens in the audience are listening who haven't followed all the details, the fee adjustments generally reduce the cost to citizens because most fees started at $50 and now we're starting at $25 for any event. We don't specify the type. I do think that simplification is really helpful at just $25. So just a real simple example, any parade used to be $100, period. Now a parade, theoretically, they only occur on one day, $25. So.
Mr. Chairman, got a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
On the waiving of the fee for agencies and department, what are those?
Yeah. So for example, when they had the National Night Out and the Sheriff's Department had their event, that's an example of one that is primarily funded by the county, so it didn't make sense for them to pay the $25 fee for us to essentially just give it right back to them. And for the school's homecoming parade, that's another one that them paying the fee doesn't. But all the other organizations that are not funded by the county, they would be expected to pay the fees, which are probably going to be lower for them going forward.
And for the officers at these events, that payment will be before the event or after?
Before. But that should probably be specified in there that it needs to happen before, because they would have to schedule that with them ahead of time based on the number of people that they're anticipating.
I think that ought to be spelled out.
Or makes sense.
Okay.
Has the sheriff did these? Is he okay with this?
Well, they're currently doing it just in a more, well, is he here? They're doing it in a more haphazard fashion now, not the sheriff's department, but the applicants. It's a little bit piecemealed of where this is coming from. So this would make it a requirement that they have to do it instead of leaving the ball in their court to either talk to the state police or sheriff's department or private security. This would require it.
The only thing I mean, I like that in general, but it makes it so prescriptive that if the sheriff, and I want them to have their judgment, if I looked at a specific event and thought, even though it's under 200 people, we need an officer there, then this would prevent them from being able to require that. I'm not sure. I wonder if we actually need that section, or you just leave it with the
section before that says you're in charge of any fees that may come up based on what they think.
right.
Okay?
And that, I'm trying to get back to that. I think one of the department heads that needed to sign off, was the sheriff's office. So I think it just give him, his office, just full authority for when they determine if there's a need and what the fee is.
Okay, so maybe take out that new additional fee section, but maybe add another sentence back there
It's before.
clarifying that it needs to happen before, and it's up to the sheriff's department or whoever to determine what is needed for this event. Okay.
Just run the updated version by the sheriff's department.
You okay with that, Sheriff?
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, where does the Amelia Day Committee fit into all this?
They're not funded by.
But we appoint the
you're
members, so they're pretty much
you're
a
asking.
county organization.
To answer your question, where they fit in is they have no funding by the county. Therefore, the fee would be $25.
So why do we appoint members to their committee?
That's a great question. I think that's open for future discussion as well.
Mr. Chairman, the history I got from it was that, because I was wondering the same thing. Originally, the county built it, created it, appointed it, the county funded it. What happened since then is the sale of the booth spaces. They've basically become solely funded and have not asked for any. Where they currently stand. Why we don't get the money.
That's my understanding too. I think it does need future discussion, but it would reduce their fee to $25. Good discussion. Thanks for all the work on the updating. Any other comments or questions on the ordinance?
Question.
I would entertain a vote to instruct staff to make those adjustments and then proceed with advertising it for public hearing and approval of the,
For December.
can make that, that'd be perfect. That'd be great time. Yeah, you've got an extra week actually, because we're early.
I have one more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
We listed all of these, I mean, all of the departments that, when we close a street for Christmas parade, that VDOT, or is that something we do?
Don't, both of those are correct. We don't do it in-house. VDOT does it, but the county does not do it for the applicant. So when they have to close the roads, we will do the road closure resolution. But as far as getting the actual roads closed and posting whatever monies are required for that, the applicant does that themselves.
It'd be good to clarify that. Might have been, maybe we missed it in there, but I don't.
Do you need a motion?
Any other, I'll go back to my motion unless there's any other comments or questions or my.
Okay, so I move that we instruct staff to modify the ordinance as discussed. Have it ready for advertising for the December meeting.
Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor, respond sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Stealing us months of work. Really appreciate, I know you'll want to put it to bed too. All right, we'll move into old and new business. Believe you all got the update from River, oh, sorry, first item then is River Street. I believe you all got the update from River Street. Is that correct?
That's right.
I'll add that Greg Coltrane, who provided the update, also called me 2 days ago, I think it was, just to discuss this in general, and it offered that they all had a meeting tonight, and so were unable to attend tonight, which had been our request. So we agreed that he would put together this pretty detailed update, which for anyone in the audience or listening is posted as part of our board packet as well. All the board members, multiple of us have expressed concern with the lack of progress regarding this, which is why we're putting additional pressure. And so Greg and I discussed now doing a monthly written update going forward that can be included for board packets, similar to the detail in this one. He agreed he would do one in December as well. I know there have been some meetings with county as well as between Amelia, Dinwiddie, and River Street to try to work on some of the progress. As the update says, without repeating all of it, there are several grants in progress of which Amelia is supporting River Street to try to accelerate and potentially move to a fiber solution, which is actually better and would address many of the challenges that they're having with being able to actually provide a high capacity signal to many of the residents. That's all the update I had from our. Anyone else has questions or comments, I can take them back to Greg. So I can't really speak for River Street. Oh, I'm sorry, I did offer one more thing. They did offer that they would reach out to the 2 new board members who are joining in January to get them up to speed on the work with River Street, et cetera. So that should be occurring. And then in January, come to our workshop and they would actually meet with us in January. Anything else regarding River Street, Mr. Harvey? Is there anything you're aware of that isn't in here or you want to comment on at all?
Mr. Chairman, I think we should just reiterate, just let people know that Amelia County has not and is not going to pay them a dime. This current project that's guess if you want to say semi-failed and way behind schedule. So, I mean, withholding money is about the most powerful tool we have at this time, and we've done that, and we have talked to them and told them that we will continue to do.
All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is we've got several ordinances on here related to light and clutter.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, board members, these are issues you all have discussed at various workshops. And so it's not new to you. So I won't belabor it, but what you have been provided, I'll walk through what these materials are. Trying to incorporate the direction that you all have indicated you want to go on these items in recent work sessions. So currently, and it's a really dated ordinance called, generally it's the solid waste ordinance, but it includes everything from tire storage to unkempt properties with weeds and grass levels to use of the landfill, convenience centers to inoperable vehicles. It's on and on and on. Everything is sort of a kitchen sink ordinance. That's not the main problem with the ordinance. The main problem with the ordinance is it's dated. So I think prompted these discussions, try to enforce the ordinance. We want to make sure it's up to date with state code. There's been a lot of changes to these statutes that enable these ordinances. A lot of changes over the last decade or so since the county's ordinance was originally adopted. So what this does, and the documents that staff has provided you do, are do a couple things. One would repeal the existing ordinance. So that's a simple repeal ordinance, and would then replace the current ordinance with 4 separate ordinances. Instead of doing it as a combined, kitchen sink ordinance, each one of these topics would be addressed separately. So what you have in your packet are 4 draft ordinances. We've worked closely with Patty and our staff to make sure it does what the county's looking for and also reflects current state law. So I'll just very briefly touch on each one. Feel free to stop me and ask questions if you have any. So one of the new ordinances would solely deal with the authority to regulate grass, weeds, trash on property, things of that nature. Again, that's already in your ordinance. Your current ordinance doesn't reflect current state law. So this would be a standalone ordinance on those issues. And the other significant change it would make is to go from criminal to civil penalties. So again, that's been talked about as A, B, less punitive on citizen, but also facilitating enforcement. So that's what that one does. Next one, an ordinance to regulate inoperable motor vehicles. Again, you already have provisions in your current ordinance that touch on this. However, this statute and state law has really changed a lot over the years. And it's a very prescriptive statute that basically tells the county what it has to do to regulate motor vehicles in the parameters of the state law. So this is pretty much drawn out of state code, and that's what this does. The other change it makes is to provide for, once again, civil penalties instead of criminal misdemeanor penalties. Next ordinance deals with the stockpiling of tires. Again, you already have provisions on this, but they're not necessarily updated with state law. Now, one difference between this topic and the other ones we're talking about is there's no clear authority in state law to move to civil penalties with this topic, violations of stockpiling of tires. The other interesting thing about this subject is it's highly regulated by DEQ. So the state, if sites get to a certain state, at some point DEQ will step in. So fines that DEQ imposes are, So they're going to focus on, I think, the most egregious violators. It's really an environmental issue. When you have this material stockpiled next to streams and groundwater, surface water, it can be a real environmental hazard. And I think that's where DEQ is coming from. So it's kind of concurrent jurisdiction with the state to regulate subject matter. And what this ordinance would do is just update it. It's fairly similar to what you already have on the books. Again, but it pulls it out to be a separate topic, a separate ordinance. And this one does not have civil penalties. The way to regulate stockpiling of tires, the unlawful stockpiling of tires, beyond what's permitted under law, the way to enforce civil penalties, in my opinion, that's where the direction you want to go. You need to address that through the zoning ordinance. I think this subject matter is touched on in the zoning ordinance, but we can look at that separately. Your zoning ordinance currently does not have civil penalties. Could. So that's a topic for another day. Just wanted to point. And then finally, your solid waste ordinance that deals with use of convenience centers, use of the landfill, what materials can go in the convenience center sites, what materials can go in the landfill. This is largely drawn from what you already have, but it does again make the change from criminal to civil penalties, which you'll see on the last page. So those are those ordinances that would be an update of your current sort of kitchen sink ordinance to make them compliant with state law. And they would need to be advertised prior to adoption. There's and if there's no questions there, or you can ask me after I touch on the next one. The next one is a separate topic. It's more recent. That is derelict structures and blight abatement. So also in your packet is a draft ordinance that includes several different tools that are available to localities under state law to get at the issue of blighted properties and how to either the county to abate blighted properties and fix issues itself, or to require the property owner to. And what you all asked me to prepare in this on this topic was something that just showed the different tools that are there under state law. So this has 4 different articles. They're all drawn from state law. They're get at this issue from different approaches. And we haven't really talked about this in detail in prior meetings, Mr. Chair. So I would just encourage you to look through this, and I'll very briefly say what the 4 approaches are. One is under state law, it's the authority of the building official to require property owners to remove and repair any structures that the building official has determined pose a danger to public health and safety of other residents. And it sets forth the process for that. Again, it would provide for civil penalties. The next one, Article 2 in the draft ordinance, deals with spot blight abatement. That is different statutory authority that's dealing with properties that are determined to have a deleterious effect on property values and quality of life in the surrounding area. And this is a very prescriptive statute as well. Defines, so the ordinance defines what is a blighted property, what is spot blight, what abatement of that means. It would require the owner to develop a plan if they're noticed of a violation, to develop a plan to abate the situation and provide tools for the county to do that if the landowner doesn't. And this one also, I'm positive I have civil penalties in here, but the point of this one is to fix the problem. So in other words, the landowner, any costs incurred would be a tax lien, essentially, the equivalent of a tax lien on the property. That's how the county would cost if incurred. Next one has to do with derelict buildings. And that one has to do with protecting health, safety, and welfare of the community by addressing derelict buildings. And you can read through that. That's, again, this is pretty prescriptive under state law. Sets out how the county would go about specific buildings that need to be repaired, renovated, or demolished, and requiring the property owner to develop do that. And that's essentially it. The final article you'll see just has to do with the general authority under civil law to go to court to declare a property a nuisance. So that's sort of a catch-all. So I know that's a lot, but these are the tools that I found under state law that, localities, some will use one, some will use none of these, some will use all four. It just depends on what the needs are and what the governing body wants to do. That's sort of something to chew on and talk about later.
A lot of work. Thank you for doing all that we've been discussing for a couple of minutes. Good. Board members have questions or comments for Mr. Gore on any of these 5 drafts? My notes and recollection addressed everything that we talked about, and so I think that's helpful. Let's go for another round of questions or comments. If there are none, he's done all this work on these we've talked about for months. I'd entertain a motion to, similar to the last one, to proceed forward with finalizing these, advertise December meeting.
Mr. Chair, that would include everything except light abatement, assuming. Because that has the 4 different, that's the last one I talked about.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's at your discretion if you want to put that in there too.
Well, first can however they want. I personally didn't have any concern. I thought that one looked good too and some aligned with.
Sure, I just wanted to be sure we were clear. Thanks.
Well, I think you're right. We should be very clear in the motion. Care to make a motion? Some direction.
I have an idea. Can we discuss it at the workshop? Too late. I'll make a motion if it follows state.
Well, and I'll add, it might provide some comfort. So the blight abatement ordinance, these are just tools that would be on the books. It doesn't, it doesn't compel the county to, they're enabling authority, in other words. It doesn't compel the county or staff to, to do this. It would be something that would then be on the books that if the situation or need arose, you would have the tool with which to deal with it.
Which is really true for all of them, as we've discussed in the last couple. I'm just going to tie into my next topic on the agenda, but these are all to make sure that we have tools that are easiest to use for the county and balance the needs of all citizens. None of them force us to do something. That's a great point there. I believe Mr. Phelps finished his motion.
Yes.
Just be clear. So we got a motion on the floor.
To prepare the stuff, prepare the drafts.
Prepare the drafts for all 5, right? Okay. Prepare the drafts for all 5 for a December and advertise for a December. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any discussion on the motion? I'll just clarify as a comment. We can still give him feedback, by the way, Mr. Phelps. Well, even if it's advertised, we can make changes at our meeting. So we need to move forward with the advertisement to meet that schedule, but it does not preclude you from giving him feedback, nor him or us adjustments between now and up to the meeting. Public comment in December, we could choose to make a change based on comments that go along with this. So you just still have all that time.
Yep.
And Mr. Chair, along that line, still getting feedback from your building staff officials. So on that the last ordinance there. So, we'll incorporate the comments we get from them.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor to, as we've discussed, all those in favor, respond with the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, thanks. I think that'll be really good. This board spent almost 6 months discussing versions of these. I think it's good for us to take responsibility and clean them out or passing them on and a new board having to come up to speed. The next topic, like I said, is related because we've been discussing these for months, and I think a theme that we've discussed that Mr. Gore has addressed is that multiple months county staff have said we don't have the staffing to be able to proactively enforce our own ordinances. That led us to taking many things out of the ordinances that we had no intention of enforcing. And so I asked Mr. Harvey and his team have put together for us since January of 2020 through October of 2021, from a solid waste side, which would be the four ordinances that were discussed, that was Ordinance K, now being broken up into four. Ms. Averett provided there had been 35 enforcement actions. And as the staff has discussed, they're really only enforcing something if citizens come and have a strong enough complaint. We don't, which means, in my opinion, we're not really necessarily doing it very fairly. And then Ms. Steele provided from a community development standpoint, there had been 15, but there is the caveat that that is only in your time since running that department, because you don't really have the records of that from before. And I think all the ones you provided are really 2021. So only 15 enforcements from there so far for this year. So I don't have any action I'm requesting on that. I just think it's really important that we keep in mind, no point in us doing all this work if they're not going to then be enforced. And so thank you all for providing that. As we move to the next one, I'll just note item G on the agenda we just covered because we did all 5 ordinances under B, so we won't have that in a moment. We'll move on to the Hindle Building presentation. Thank you, sir.
I'm Jay Griles. Sorry.
You're good. You'll fix it.
I'm used to not speaking on the microphone. Really, I want to start out by thanking you all for really 3 things: for the opportunity to be on the Hindle Building Committee, for forming the committee and giving us the opportunity to take a look at the Hindle Building. I want to thank you for your support. I'll especially name Roger and say he's been very supportive of this effort. He's attended the vast majority of the meetings we've had. He's acted as a secretary at those meetings. He's contacted folks and been very supportive, as all of you all have been supportive. I know some of you have come by as we have had the open houses at the Hindle Building, and just felt a lot of support during this effort. And also the staff has been very supportive. Taylor, Holly, and others have helped us a lot as we've worked through this process. So I really appreciate that. And you've demonstrated your support most aptly by funding this feasibility study. So you kind of put your money where your mouth was, and we appreciate that. And I'll say the feasibility study really came out of a lot of pre-work the committee did. There were lots of ideas, lots of folks met and shared ideas and gave us ideas, came by and looked at the building. We had a couple open houses, a couple of large meetings, and some virtual meetings as a result over the last couple of years of the pandemic. And through that, we got tons of ideas. We did a hazardous materials analysis. We did a structural analysis. And we got to the point where we had a lot of data, but it wasn't very informative. It was just a lot of data points. So really out of that, we said, how do we bring this together? And that's what the feasibility study did for us, was allowed us to take the data we had and add some more data through the study and really turn it into information. And that's what we're going to share with you tonight is what the results of that study are. So Craig Wilson from Summit Engineering is here to walk through. I think you all have the feasibility study in your package. Hopefully you got a chance to look at it. He's going to walk you through the highlights of that study with this PowerPoint presentation he has. I will ask you to take it easy on him. Apparently he got his booster shot yesterday, so he's about 24 hours after that. I'm not sure he's feeling fully himself this evening, but he's still here to walk us through this. And then after he walks through that, I'm going to update you on what we've done after we got the results of the study.
Thank you, Mr.
I think that was a HIPAA violation. Thank you for this opportunity to be before you this evening to kind of walk you through the study. Hopefully you've had a chance to to look at some of it. I've enjoyed working with Jay and the others on the study. It's a very, very unique building. And if you just go ahead and go to the next slide, he's going to from the back there. One of the things I started looking at right away on the building, because it is such a unique building, is its history, particularly its architectural history. I found a lot of websites really early on that made reference that this was a Charles M. Robinson building. There was nothing that proved it was. So I started digging. Reason to dig is a lot of reworking of these older buildings can be accomplished through historic tax credits, state and federal historic tax credits, help pay a lion's share of the cost of doing it. And that could be potentially available here. Next. Indeed, this building was designed by Charles M. Robinson, and the thing I found that proved that it was, you see it on the slide, is a little teeny article in the Richmond Dispatch where the contract is being let for the construction of the building, and the architect is in charge of doing that. And it names him Charles M. Robinson. This was not in the Virginia archives. This actually, I found it Library of Congress online. I thought was really interesting. Not in Virginia, but it had to go all the way to that archives and was able to find that. And DHR, Department of Historic Resources, was very interested in this. They wanted me to send it to them. So they now have that in their record as well. Mr. Robinson designed a whole bunch of schools, university buildings, James Madison, Mary Washington, William and Mary, a lot of schools in Richmond, larger schools in Richmond, including Thomas Jefferson High School, if you know that high school building. But he also did a lot of rural schools. Next bullet there. The state at that time, next bullet. The state was just getting interested early 1900s in there being high schools in small towns and rural areas, because it was happening in the urban areas, but it wasn't happening consistently across the state. So the state got involved in this, started supporting the development of high schools in rural and small town areas. And Mr. Robinson rode that wave. He designed a bunch of buildings just for that purpose. And your building was one of them. It was constructed in 1910, 1911. Next bullet. Next bullet, there it is. And it's really interesting. I did quote some of the news articles about the building because it was described as an example of progress in Amelia. It said that it was an example of the social development of the county. This was a big deal in 1910, 1911. It was really a big deal. And then next bullet, please. Because of the connection to Charles M. Robinson, because of DHR's interest in it already, this building could be eligible to be on the state and national register of historic places. That nomination can take a little bit of time, but the singular thing here that really stands out for it is its architecture and its relationship to Mr. Robinson. By talking with DHR, they said they were very worried a lot of these buildings are beginning to be torn down. Losing it. Next bullet, please. If it is accepted on the National Register, you then can trigger and use historic tax credits. 25% Virginia credits, 20% federal credits. That get both credits, it has to go to a private developer, have to be a for-profit money-making proposition. But you still can get state credits, the 25% credits, even if it's for public use. But Virginia is very generous with their state credits. Some states don't have it at all. Virginia is very, very helpful. So even the county, if it took on the building for its own use, be able to get the 25% credits. Those are, I was asked earlier this week about how does that work? Well, the credits get sold. If you look at the details of what's in the feasibility study, you'll see a number in there of 80 cents on the dollar. Credits get sold for less than their full value. The person's trying to make money. There were tax law changes back in 2017 that anybody who is a developer engaged in a project like this, to get the full value of the credits, has to hang on to the building for 5 years. Used to be they could turn the building over immediately and get the credits. Now they can only get 20%. So that changed things, and the value of the credits. A few years ago, they were like 92 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar. Go to the next slide, please. Go ahead and put the first bullet. We did look at the comprehensive plan. I mean, thought that was important. It was referenced earlier a couple of times about the comprehensive plan. There's a statement, a major goal about community character and vision, protect the rural character, the cultural heritage, the beauty of the county. And this building is very much a part of that cultural heritage for the county. And when the building was built, it was a big deal, and it was very modern, actually. I'll reference a couple of things about that. Next bullet. Under that particular goal, there's a strategy about creating policies and plans for the courthouse village that recognize the scale of the village, its ambiance, and certainly this building has been a part of the village since 1910, 1911. Kind of stands there by itself now, very much a part of the village for all these decades. And then major goal number 9, the next bullet, please. And it talks about the historic sites in the county and preserving those, the landmarks. And indeed, this is one of your historic buildings. Next slide, please. Market conditions, we looked at those a little bit. You know, I'm one of these people that drives up and down 360 all the time, going back and forth to clients in different directions. And so many people only know anything about Amelia County because of 360. They don't know anything else about it. But in reality, you know, that is your retail hub. It is where businesses are, where the industrial park is. You have an interesting mix of folks. Just go ahead and put all those bullets up there. Might as well just put them all up there. Save a minute. All up there. You know, the age ranges of residents in the county. You know, a lot of counties, rural counties, don't have that many young people. They're all leaving, and they have a high number of older people. But you actually have a balance that's very much in keeping with the state as a whole, which says a lot about the county, and says that you really are this family-oriented, single-family housing residential community that does attract people to stay, folks, senior adults and all. The incomes and housing costs are lower than the statewide averages. Next bullet. You leak your sales to other communities. Next bullet. You know, you do what's a retail gap analysis, and there's a chart in the study that shows how much money leaves the county for retail. And you know that. You go into Chesterfield County and other places to shop. People work in that direction, so they shop while they're coming and going to work. So a lot of your money leaves the county, except for gas stations, because you have a surplus of gas stations. It's amazing to see those 4 gas stations just almost as soon as you get into the county. So you do really well on gas stations. Highway 360 is your major, thoroughfare. All your retail, a lot of your retail is there. The courthouse is quiet. Put the traffic counts in there. This 4,500 a day versus 17,000 some odd out. It's pretty quiet. One of the other things in terms of the market, we did. The group had already done a lot of research and had a lot of conversations with folks, and we had one as well in my engagement. A lot of the folks, their interest is a community center. That's the market they're interested in among your residents as they express what they're interested in. Next slide, please. This is what's called a 4-square building. You know what a 4-square house is, right? 4 rooms, 4 rooms, 4 rooms. It was built exactly like that. Basement, first floor, second floor. The building is very structurally solid, but obviously, as you know, if you've been in the building, there are some major issues on the interior in particular. All of the electrical and plumbing and mechanical systems would have to be replaced and upgraded. The lead-based paint and asbestos, there is that in the building, and that would have to be dealt with. There actually is remnants of 3 heating systems in the building, and I want to mention that in particular. When the building was built, there was a ventilation system. There were 2 furnaces, one on either side of the building, and a ventilation shaft that went up and took hot air into all the rooms. It was a very airy place. It was kind of interesting how that system works. Most of that is still in the building. Those old 2 furnaces are sitting there, and you can find the pulleys from the ventilation system where it moved the air up through this ventilation shaft. Along came another big furnace. That's still sitting there, and that was a hot water radiator system. After that, there were individual gas heaters in each room. So it's had a whole array of things. There is a very large water tank in the building basement. One of the things that's noted when you read the newspaper articles about this modern building was it had its own well, its own water storage system, and had water on every floor. Kind of a new thing, evidently, back in 1910, 1911. I think every room actually had a water fountain. So it was kind of, very, very modern. I mentioned the windows in particular. When you see some of the windows in this one picture, well, both pictures, if you actually use historic tax credits and go after tax credits, windows are one of those things. Next bullet. One of those things that DHR wants you to keep in place. One of the studies had referenced taking them all out. I almost guarantee if you use historic tax credits, DHR can say, don't take them out, fix them. They're actually in fairly decent shape given their age. They're missing panes of glass and all that. They are repairable, and given their size, they would be very expensive to replace. So cost of repairing and replacing might be just about the same. Go ahead and put the rest of the bullets up there. Hasn't caught up with me yet. There's a lot of moisture damage in the building on the second floor and in the basement. Some of the plaster is falling. And basement has a coal bin still. There's one room in the basement that has no floor, and you can see the remnants of the coal still sitting in there. There are 2 bathrooms downstairs that were rather large, actually. They're in pretty bad shape as well. One of the issues with plaster is plaster on land. Any building that's not heated and cooled on a regular basis, what happens over time, in addition to moisture creating problems, the plaster, as it breathes, because it's heating up in the summer and cooling during the winter, heating up, cooling, it starts to let go of that lab. It just moves too much. And that's kind of where the building is at this point. A lot more of that plaster is probably going to, since the building is not heated or cooled at this point. Next slide. We looked at 3 potential scenarios. One of them was apartments, because that's what's been done with so many of the older schools, whether in Richmond or other communities all around the state. That, I think, was part of a conversation that was done before with Dave McCormick, who is a developer who came out and looked at the building. He was concerned about its size and not having enough units and kind of passed on it. And as we looked at that, we felt like we needed to put some numbers to that, because he never gave you any numbers. So we put some numbers to that and said, okay, studio apartments, entire building, you can only have 11 apartments. Usually when you do a redo like this, you get, and obviously when you spend a lot of money on an old building, you can only get 11 out of it. It's hard to make the math. That's what Dave McCormick, I think, was saying without actually ever crunching the numbers himself. We did a scenario as a community center, and you can see some of the little examples of how things might fit in the building. We did it as a mixed use thing with some apartments and some community center space, and then retail space, commercial space, particularly a restaurant. There are some common factors. Do those next bullets and actually the subpoints on that, if you would, please. There is, as you know, a very high cost construction environment. So we did not want to soft pedal this. It will be expensive, but all building construction right now is expensive. We did go at it with the idea of maintaining the historic character, i.e. not taking out the windows, but assuming you're going to repair the windows in place. We went at it with the idea that there would need to be an elevator and a fire suppression system that helps with a lot of the egress issues. And look at the picture, folks look at that glass elevator and say, glass elevator. One of the requirements in DHR, if you're using historic tax credits, if you make an adaptation to a building or have to add something new to it, they want it to look different than the original building, so that when somebody looks at it, they can see the old historic part, see that new thing you added. So we just decided to do a glass elevator, because obviously that was very much a sign that this is something new to the building, handicap accessible. We mentioned just leaving some of those old boilers in place and just kind of work around them. That's where a lot of your asbestos is. It's in those old boilers, I guarantee you. We then ran, next slide, please. We did pro formas on those 3 different scenarios, and that's one of the examples there. The cost comes into somewhere between, depending on which one you go, $2.3 to $2.9 million. A lot of money. I played with the numbers. And this, Dave McCormick, smarter than I am, he probably did this in his head from Waukesha Development. But I played with the numbers. I tried to make that thing come out. for apartments. And it's just, it's not going to happen. So he was right in a broad sense. And now we have some numbers to look at and say, okay, I can see why that doesn't work. That's even using the historic tax credits. Because again, if it was a private developer, they'd use state and federal historic tax credits at 45%, 80% of 45%. But even at that, it's work. The mixed use, the idea of a private developer, again, a mixed use building, the county might lease a portion of it and several apartments, same thing, couldn't make the numbers work. That really left us with that scenario number 2, the idea of a public facility, a community center. There's no reason to do a cash flow analysis there. It's a whole different animal at that point. But it would be it's the more inexpensive redo because you're not adding a whole lot of plumbing for things like that. So that 2.3 million into things. And the state historic tax credits would be 450,000 that could go towards that 2.3. Eligible for federal, because the federal requires that you get income producing property. And that we went ahead, because I never like doing these studies without talking about operations a little bit. So we did a little quick down and dirty operation scenario, what it would cost to just operate the building. Came up with a cost of about $83,000 per year. And that includes a staff person that we typically grab your teacher's salary and say that's what, coordinator, that's their salary. That would require still volunteers. It would require community groups using the building, renting the building, because in that pro forma for operations, we have some rental income, some fundraising income, just to kind of make all the numbers work. Very, very typical of a facility like that. If it's a community center, we have those kind of uses. Fundraising event to support it. Next slide. So in summary, first, okay, good. The reuse of the building, I think is kind of just a chance to really preserve something that really, again, a lot of folks don't know the history of it. They just know it's an old building. It used to be the high school. But it is a chance to preserve a building that was a key part of the development of the county, first half of the last century. It's really fascinating if you do read some of the stories about it in the newspaper. One of them referenced there being a play held at the high school to raise funds to pay for the high school. Because when I say the state participated, they didn't participate much. They set standards and they aided in other ways. But, Emilia County raised the money to have a high school back when that was just not here yet. So it's kind of an interesting building. The scenario number 1, the adaptive use of it as a community center and maintaining the building within the village does very much fit into the comprehensive plan. And the village itself, the traffic count is low. The village needs life, more life to it if you're ever going to have more businesses come to the village. Livelier. So this would be an opportunity to do that. Because it is structurally sound, it is technically feasible to redo the building. Not cheaply, but it is feasible. It is probably, as a for-profit endeavor, it's probably not going to work. It's likely the only use the building has in the future. Obviously, that's the decision you guys make. I don't make. I'm just saying that, if you get another developer to come look at it, I'm probably going to say the same thing that Dave McCormick has said, I think a couple of times actually. And the same thing I'm saying, it's too small, costs too much. Make it into a for-profit entity of some sort. It would actually be an opportunity to enhance the programs of the county's Parks and Recs department, libraries for that matter, the schools, the uses of the building. One of the reasons the community center is cheaper at 2.3 million is you basically are maintaining all those classrooms, keeping them flexible for lots of different types of uses. Redoing the bathrooms in the basement, making still a substantial bathrooms because you've now got a recreation field next door that's getting a whole lot of use. So there's a chance to have restrooms available and perhaps even showers. And hopefully, if you were able to redo the building and make it into a community center, it would bring more traffic into downtown. And that could have lots of benefit. More people in downtown on a regular basis. during the day and into the evenings. There might be evening activities at the building. So there's a kind of a spillover benefit that's actually there. One of the other things, I didn't say this, it's in the study though, is the idea of housing being there. One of the other tough things about housing is the studio apartments in an old school. That's a top these days. A lot of young folks love those kind of facilities, and senior adults for that matter. But usually those kind of things succeed because there's activities around them somewhere. Things are going on and folks want to live where things are happening. That's another factor right now that would make it very to have housing there because the village is so quiet, particularly that corner. It's quiet. There's cemeteries. It's a kind of a different thing. But as a community center, as a part of the complex of county buildings, you're right there in the mix because all your other county services are part of the. So that's all I have to say. I think Jay wants another thing, but any questions and to mind real quick in terms of the study itself?
Very thorough. I appreciate the graphics and things too, so we can really visual.
Yeah, we love old buildings. They can be challenging, but they're really cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, so we got the results of that study, and I just want to let you know how we're following up with that. The first thing, we didn't really go looking for a community center as the answer. We really started with getting ideas from the community, and those ideas range from residential to retail, all those things that they looked at, and that's why ultimately we needed a feasibility study to really direct us. So once we got the feasibility study back and we had the direction, there are a couple questions came to mind. Do we need a community center? I mean, just because that's what the Hindle building is best for, you still have to answer the question, do you need a community center? And does the Hindle building itself fit as that building? So the committee followed up with some folks there in the area, I guess the neighbors basically. Parks and Rec, we talked to Glenn and we talked to Nora. They're doing a great job right now with Parks and Rec, and they have a real sense for what's going on in the community. And we talked to them about how the Hindle building would fit into the existing facilities they have. We talked to Jill at the library and talked about how the rooms in the Hindle building would work, or maybe some of the things that had been going on in the library. We talked to Dr. Harper about things that were going on at the school and some ideas they have for after-school programs, that sort of thing. And also talked to Jane Henderson over at the county extension office, because she offers a lot of programs. Apparently pre-COVID, a lot of those happened in the library. Those have kind of tailed off now, but post-COVID, we expect those to start up again. Pretty consistently, what we heard is the Hindle building provides room size that doesn't really exist. The Parks and Rec building, the gym, there's two small rooms up front, and then there's a gymnasium, but there's no real rooms between those sizes. So if you have a group that's too big for the small rooms, then it gets swallowed in the gymnasium. They really need something between there, and that's the size rooms that exist in the Hindle building. So really, it offers an opportunity to provide some new needed programs as well. Parks and Recs folks talked about, and I think we all know that Parks and Recs does an excellent job with athletics throughout the county and providing facilities and providing programs. But there's not a lot on the other side, community theater, music or lessons, those kind of things that they might want to offer, but they don't really have the space to do that. And the Hindle building provides that kind of space and opportunity for that. And the other message I heard from the folks at the library and Parks and Rec is their buildings are relatively full. So we don't want to wait until there are people standing outside waiting to go in to use the facilities. They're already at capacity. They're shuffling things around to get everybody in there. Granted, the last couple of years, it hadn't been like that, but pre-COVID, that's where they were. And post-COVID, they expect that kind of activity again. So, I think we found two things as we talked to those folks. We found, a community center does make a lot of sense, and the Hindle building because of the size of the rooms. And I don't know if you saw it, but the upstairs was actually 2 classrooms and an auditorium originally. So that's what, we looked at is, again, there's another size room that can use that bigger room. And then you can break into the smaller rooms if you needed to, that sort of thing. So what's next? We're going to make a request in the CIP request process. We're going to continue to look for grant funding. Todd Fortune's been working with us and looking for grants. We haven't had a lot of success so far, but some of that is because I think we didn't have direction. We didn't know where we were going. So we'll be able to be a little more specific in the grants we're looking for, and gotten some good news about some activity over in Blackstone where they were converting the Armory into a community center and applied for some grants. And so I think there's still some possibilities out there, and we'll continue to pursue those. And the committee's talked about doing fundraising to support the program as well. Just kind of, Craig talked about in 1910 and 1911, folks are doing fundraising to support the new high school. And the same kind of idea, the community coming together and raising some funds to support the renovation of this building. So that's what we have. We look forward to your all support as we go forward in the CIP process. And I'll answer any questions you'll have.
Very thorough.
Thank you.
Very thorough. Good job.
Thanks.
And I think exactly what we intended when we asked for the feasibility study. So yeah, great deliverable here. Obviously we made no commitment for funding, as you well know, but it's very helpful to provide for future ideas and know what's actually feasible. That's great.
All right.
Thank you and the entire committee. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, I think the next item is mine. I said I'd provide an update on Crossroads funding. To reiterate what I started to talk about last month, Crossroads completed a forensic audit as well as a follow-up audit of some additional funding sources as well. Both audits were passed without any significant issues. They did result in some recommendations for upgrading the computer systems, which the staff at Crossroads had already wanted. Based on that, as well as the success of the current interim director and progress being made on a permanent director, I would recommend that we continue our funding or reinstate our funding for this year. You may remember a couple months back, I suggested we hold on that funding. We voted on that. So I will make a motion to reinstate our funding as planned for this year and go ahead and make the catch-up payment then to Crossroads and continue on our normal schedule. Any questions on that item? Motion? All right, all those in favor, respond with the sign of aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. I look forward to carrying that news back to Crossroads in 2 weeks at the meeting. All right, we've got Broad Meadows Road resolution. Steele?
Okay, this will be short and sweet. This is just the resolution to finally request VDOT to take Broad Meadow into the state system. Been a long time coming. So this is the resolution to do that. That's all I have.
All right, do we have a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, respond sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. The next item, as I said, we covered those 4 updates when Jeff did all 5, so that's good. And then the last item in this section is also mine. I have a couple citizens come to me and talk about ideas they had for using some of the county property for events, and including things like Powhatan, you may know, has the very successful Festival of the Grape, I believe they call it, so essentially a wine festival. And the citizens were saying that, asking me, did I know that things like that are not allowed in Amelia? And I said, no, honestly, I wasn't aware. And so Ms. Steele helped me look up what our rules are regarding that. There's nothing that we've been able to find in an ordinance. However, the policy, which is called the Building and Property Use Policy, does prohibit sale of alcohol on any county property. So that would negate any possibility of doing festivals and things like that on county property, which are the most likely places to do such festivals. And then our form or application for use of county property states that any alcohol on property is prohibited, even if that wasn't for sale. So we do go, we're pretty restrictive then. Well, I'll stop there. Anyone else have any questions first? What we found as we did the research makes sense. Okay.
Does changing the policy require a public hearing?
Just like when we changed policy, however, it's a good question. Policy is noted, it has not been updated since 1982. So probably many other things in the policy that as we get to updates, we could review. But I think these restrictions then, are putting are more restrictive than maybe originally intended. And again, we're at now 30 or more years since it's been revised. I would suggest that we change this to say that any use of alcohol, including sale, needs to comply with ABC permits, make that the responsibility of the applicant to get any such permits, et cetera. That would also then be consistent with the ordinance we reviewed earlier tonight and are passing forward for next month with the events that says the county has to review, including sheriff's office, et cetera. We would know then if any alcohol is being done. And maybe, Holly, that's a great point, that if we move forward with this, then the special event ordinance should probably say in compliance with any ABC law regulations as well. So that's what I'm going to propose. Before making official motion, since it's my item, I'll just offer up any comments or questions from the rest of the board. On that.
Mr. Chairman, what do other localities do? We opening up all county property? Specifying the county lot,
Most other counties do seem to allow it with following ABC laws. As an example, when we had the Emilia Day dance at the county lot, people were not even allowed to bring their own alcohol without any sale or anything. They're not technically allowed to even bring any. But keep in mind, it's not, and what I want to propose does not say that it's a free-for-all either. It says, you would need to make it through the event permits and then comply with ABC. It doesn't automatically open. It just allows the possibility of that, where today there's not even a possibility. Question.
I like the process. Should we put some of that on the promoter of the event? Say the Emilia Day festival they have. May not want alcohol. Committed on county property. How do you enforce it? Do we need to tweak it?
So that's the thing, though. So it would say, they would have to request it. Just allowing it doesn't mean it's automatically will show up with alcohol. They have to do it. They would have to make it as part of their permits.
They can request it or not request it.
Correct.
Show up. Yeah, not requested.
It could be enforced. Then it's following normal state laws. Yeah, good question for clarity.
I think like Parks and Rec, for example, any county you go to, they prohibit alcohol on their public ball fields. Powhatan, for example, you have an event in town. Alcohol is prohibited at the ballpark. So each event or each entity can still control their own rules, but it's not just a free for all. You can't just go to
Yeah.
Courthouse Square and bring beer because that's public display unless it's permitted. So that kind of falls back on the ABC, the state regulation.
Right. It's a good example of Parks and Rec. So because it's not even allowed on property, like Parks and Rec does their snowflake ball, thank you, every year, things like that, which could actually be fundraisers, and that's how many organizations raise funds, is like doing a bar, which is again permitted. They're not able to take advantage of those kind of opportunities for fundraising. And we do see that, then people use private property for that, some like the private schools and things, and they make a tremendous amount of money for fundraising because, tremendous at some of those events. And so we're totally limiting people's ability to be able to do that. Good discussion. Any other questions or comments? Don't see anybody. All right, since it was my item, then I'll go ahead and make a motion that we amend the policy to allow alcohol use, and that our policy on special events be updated to specify that those need to be as permitted and following ABC regulations. Make sure the motion sounded like it
Sounds
covered.
right to me.
All right, all those in favor, respond sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, Mr. Harvey, take it away for your section.
All right. First item up, tab number 9. It's waste management. The host fee check for the month was right in line with where we've been, $266,052.01. Commonwealth Regional Council has submitted their items of interest for October. Anybody's got any questions? I'm sure Mr. Scott or Mr. Phelps be able to answer what I couldn't. EMV Select, that monthly report is here. We also had a visit today from Mary Browning, who is, he's a district rep for them. Payment for the month was $4,746. The information that he brought back that stood out the most was most DMV selects through the pandemic fell off pretty severely and it made their way back. But Amelia's was pretty well straight across. He actually said that there's some governmental buildings that house these that are not open yet. So that's a big part of it. But our numbers did not fall off. Item 12, this is an information sheet that came from Brightpoint. Actually, there'll be Brightpoint July the 1st. That's the new name for John Tyler Community College. As you can see, the number of graduates that we had last year dropped off. Obviously, that most likely pandemic related. I think the other thing of note is the most popular academic program is health sciences, followed by general studies. There's a letter from the Amelia Nottaway Technical Center that they reformed their advisory committee, which I have agreed to help them with. They've got a meeting coming up December the 1st. And 2 other items that are not on the list. We had a notification from VDOT today that the local share of the sidewalk project is increased 71.5% against the budget that we submitted in the grant. It went up $222,175 to $381,056. Total budget is $1.5 million. And I'll remind everyone, when we put in for the grant, there was discussion that if the grant was awarded but the terms weren't suitable, we would just turn it down. We have to notify them by Friday that we accept or acknowledge adopt the fees that have been recalculated. Just have to acknowledge it. So my recommendation is just to acknowledge it, and we'll see what they bring to us another 60 days. The last thing is the Hindle building. Guys all left. There's a student from New York University, Columbia, who lives in Richmond. He was searching around looking for a room, looked like an old classroom, as well as a room that could look like a library to film part of a student film, very small part of a student film about Ronald McNair. Ronald McNair is an African-American astronaut, and I swear I believe that guy went to the University of Richmond. But the student has been out here and looked at the building. He actually came out last Saturday. He expressed an interest. He was going to bring some other people back tomorrow to look. They have provided the legal agreements and things that they use different places across the country. I have run those by Mr. Gore. He said if it wasn't going to impact the staff too much, that the agreements looked okay. I don't want to put words in Mr. Gore's mouth. But my plan is to meet with student producer tomorrow. Unless anybody's got any substantial objections, they're indemnifying us for anything that might happen over at the building. We've told them we don't have electricity there, we don't have water there, and we're not going to bring it to them. He was comfortable with that. He also liked the library right there beside the conference room that we preserved, and it might be that they want to do a little bit in there as well. So we can continue to pursue this unless anybody's got any objections. And they've not committed that they want it. They're still looking at this. They're looking at a building in Cumberland as well. I think they call that the Hamilton School. He's just getting his options together.
Thank you for that update.
Okay.
Doesn't look like any.
That's all that I have in the way of a report.
Thank you. Go through the Board of Supervisors if you have any additional comments, starting with District 1.
One comment. Anybody can hear, but I was targeting to some. As much as we went through over these apartments, rewrite or review of the comprehensive plan is coming up in a year. Folks, that's when we really need input. We had 746 responses to the survey. We need way more than that. Hopefully, give us a better guide than evidence. Now, that's when we need the input.
No comments.
District 3.
I agree with David. That's perfectly said. You know, I kind of say that probably too much about input from our citizens. I mean, not to rub any salt in the wounds, but as far as the apartments go, I mean, I'm an Emilia lifer. I don't support residential growth. I never have. Why would I? I like what I got. I like my friends. I don't need new ones. You know, but that being said, it really doesn't matter how I feel. Constituents feel, how the people in Amelia feel. And as far as what I gained personally, it was less than 1% supported versus overwhelming that were against. So at that point, it really didn't matter because I'm here to do what the people wanted. I did find it kind of funny though that just yesterday, a well-respected gentleman I know, he told me that I was voting for the apartments. And, you know, through this whole process, I understand that it's gotten heated, but it's amazing. Communication is a great tool. And throughout this whole process, people have been so busy for me personally telling me how much they don't want these apartments. That don't know me personally asked how I felt about them or how my constituents felt about them. But like I said, I tried to stay neutral to take information from both sides to, you know, stop the mudslinging online. You know how that goes. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, sometimes just stop, take a minute. I mean, you may be upset about something, but just ask, see how other people feel about it or how the majority is going. It may solve a lot of trouble and a lot of heartache down the road. Thanksgiving's coming up. Wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and hope everybody's thankful for what they have and appreciative. I know the last few years have been turned most of our lives kind of on a different tilt. So I know I'm definitely thankful for what I've got, and I wish everybody the best.
Thank you. Mr. Crab, anything? Thank you. Wrap up with a couple. I think it's a great point from Mr. Phelps, and Mr. Wyatt summarized it nicely. For me, the zoning came down to two things. I campaigned on economic development, not residential development. So I feel like I was elected based on economic development, of which this did not progress us. And the vast majority, I think you're probably right, 99% of the citizens who contacted were opposed to this. There's always a possibility, as we're talking about people not speaking up, that there were more that were supporting it, but I tend to look at that like I do voting. If you don't show up and vote, your voice isn't counted. And we can't possibly know what people are thinking or predict what they're thinking. So as a supervisor, I feel like it's my responsibility to go with what the citizens contact, and overwhelmingly, they were not in support of this project. As a reminder, since we combined the meetings, we don't have one next week. As Mr. Wyatt said, enjoy Thanksgiving. And then our meetings at this point, unless I don't know of any changes, will be as scheduled with a workshop on December 8th and regular meeting on December the 15th. I believe we do not have a need for any closed session tonight.
Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn,
Yes, please. Go ahead.
I want to
Yes, sir.
say something about the comment.
Yes, sir.
Sean and Joseph both said the word. Please contact us. Taking assumptions, running on social media, contact us. All five of us have a phone on our hip.
That is a great point. Thank you. And part of what I was trying to do with the comments earlier in the meeting about the salaries and personnel policy is I've seen some very inaccurate comments this week running amok on Facebook. Don't believe everything you read. If you have a question, just contact us. As we've reached the end of our stated agenda, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you and have a great night.